Cleveland to the lake. 3, 4.
Yeah, there you go.
3, 4.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody to the AFC Northcast. This week, Cleveland rocks. That's fucking goddamn right. Cleveland rocks. We will be talking about the NFL Week 4, the AFC North Bowl, as we kind of dubbed it last week since all the teams played each other. But thanks for stopping by. Thanks for showing up. If you're not listening to us live, joining in on the conversation, we are live right now on YouTube. We're live on Twitch. We're live on Facebook Live, right? So come join the conversation, 9:30 Eastern, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Come join. It's always a good time, good fun. We got Pigskin Pick'ems. Join the Pigskin Pick'ems with us. We'll talk a little bit about those as they come along. This week, I did fucking poorly. I've been doing awful this year, actually, compared to last year. But it's been kind of tough. I don't know. Figuring out who everybody is. I don't know. But who was on top this week? Let's see.
I know Heriberto was close.
Cromartie's Kids. I don't know who that is. You guys know who that is?
No.
Dang.
I do not.
Well, Cromartie's Kids, congratulations. You are top of the AFC North for this week for the AFC North cast for the Pigskin Pick'ems. And then like 4 people tied at 9th place. One of them being my wife, who actually just overpassed me this week in overall picks. So she's now picking better than I am week by week. I've created a monster, guys. I've created a monster. But that being said, join the Pigskin Pick'em. It's never too late. Look, we can still, just kind of tally up your points week by week and, look at who's coming over the top every week. Not a big deal. Feel free to join. There's still links and stuff posted all over the place. If you want a link, just drop us a comment or, slide into those DMs and let us know. And we'll give you the link for the Pigskin Pick'em. But, with that, let's talk some fucking football. Let's talk a little news, actually, first. You want to talk? Oh, that's a good idea. Let's talk about what y'all are drinking. What are you drinking, Chad?
Beers.
This beer is called Luscious. It's a British Imperial Stout from a Vermont microbrewery called The Alchemist. Craft beer aficionados would know this brewery for its famous IPA called Heady Topper, one of the most sought-after IPAs in the United States. But this British Imperial Stout, just as good.
And I'm drinking not cheapo beer this week. I've got some bourbon barrel aged Three Philosophers from a brewery in the home of the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown.
Nice stuff. I'm drinking water. Yeah.
Solid.
Solid. Just staying on the hydration.
You doing heavy squats like Joey was last week.
Right. Yeah, heavy squats, sure.
Just drunk on Cleveland in first place.
Absolutely, I am. I drank a bunch during the Friday podcast, talked a bunch of shit, and then Sunday was just too stressful, so I drank a bunch then. So I decided to abstain for a little while. So maybe next week I'll have some more of the same old bourbon and water. I don't know. But so with that, now let's talk about news. Chad, you had something you want to talk about. Some people might already know, but
yeah, I thought we might bounce around the AFC North as it used to be a little bit. We had a few notable ex-AFC Northers making some headlines for their respective franchises this week. One, New York Giant Jabril Peppers this week had a big 30-yard interception return for a touchdown. Used to be a Cleveland Brownie.
Yeah, he drafted. I still like him. I don't know, man.
Hey, it was a dominating performance for the Giants, right? They went in there and they've got some hype, and
yeah, it's good for the
everybody's
Giants.
a winner.
I can never forget the sack that Peppers had on Case Keenum last year against when they played Denver. That was pretty fucking sick. Or it was the year before last, right? No, it was last year. But that was pretty stellar.
And once a brownie, always a brownie, right?
Kind of, I guess. I mean, like, he survived through 0-16, so he'll always have a special place with the Browns, I think. Kind of like that whole, like, Sashi thing, like he died for our sins, right?
I was going to save this for later, but since we're going around the AFC North, let's see if you guys can name. There's a early first quarter of the season defensive player of the year candidate that is a former AFC North member. He's top 10 in the league in sacks with 3.5, and second in the league in interceptions with 3. Anybody venture a guess? I know
Jamie
it's kind
Collins?
of nice, very nice. Mr. Jamie Collins on,
Yeah.
I think, the stingiest by points defense in the league.
That is
Pats
true.
so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, he came from the Pats. Again,
Well
lived
played.
through the 0-16 and 1-15, so he might be a Patriot, but he's still got a special place because he survived it with us. So
He's immortalized.
I believe they call that a beauty mark.
yeah. Nice.
We'll bury the lead here and go around the AFC North a little bit. Ex-AFC Norther Pittsburgh Steeler middle linebacker LJ Fort recently signed by Joey's Baltimore Ravens. Once an AFC Norther, always an AFC North. Are you excited to have LJ Fort in the fold, Joey?
I am. This was part of, I think, the fallout of some things that happened on the Monday after the embarrassing performance by the Ravens defense. So we'll cover it because it ties in with a couple other things involving Ravens linebacker core and the defense as a whole. But yeah, LJ Fort, he's a pro. He was kind of the guy left holding the bag when Shazier went down in Pittsburgh, and kind of
Then they
surprised that he was a
signed
free
Sean
agent.
Spence. Yeah, and many
Yeah.
fans wish they just left LJ Fort in there and gave him a better shot before he left the Steelers. So I wish him good fortune with you guys because I think he got a little bit of a raw deal with the Steelers. And probably the most notorious AFC Norther still patrolling the middle of the field. Well, at least as of Sunday in the middle of his game with the Raiders, Vontez Burfict just can't keep his head away from other people's heads, and he can't stop being
Worst
proud of it.
forearm.
He trucked somebody, and then he got ejected.
Jack
and
Doyle.
Then he bragged about it, and now he is suspended for 1 year and maybe forever.
Right.
Vontez Burfict.
Somebody on the Oakland Raiders coaching staff thought it was a good idea to make him a team captain. I don't know how the fuck that decision got made.
Right.
Well, it wasn't that long ago. He was looking pretty sane next to Antonio Brown.
yeah.
that's true.
He was the hold me back guy.
Yeah.
He just can't. He just sees that big old melon, and he just can't help himself. He just has to hit it. He just has to hit it. Doesn't matter whose it is. He's an animal out there. I mean, I'm sure that in his peak, if he was a Steeler, I'd have liked having him on the team because he played that old school brand of just vicious hitting football. But it's like he truly actually wants to hurt people, like not
Right.
just win. You know, I don't think he's good for the NFL. Like I think he's what takes the excellent part of the violence and pushes it past reasonability. He's
Yeah, I mean,
bad.
to me, I think it's about intent. You know, like it's very clear that it was with intent. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, if these things just kind of happen and they're just bump and go, and it just is what it is, and you know they're trying to do the best they can to mitigate it. But yeah, he seems very much so with the intent of doing so, knowing so. And then, like, yeah, he gets off the field and he's just kind of like laughing about it and like pointing. I don't know. It's just a bad look.
Yeah.
And I really, man, I hate to be like that old fart that's just like, think of the children, right? Because I remember that a lot, even like with Cam Newton a couple years ago, right? Everyone's like, think of the impression he's making on the children, right? When I was just like, shut the fuck up, right? But with someone like Vontez Burfict, I really do kind of think like, yeah, like there's a lot of young impressionable kids that play football out there that might be thinking like, this is like the cool hard ass thing to do. I don't know, man. Like I
Well,
said, I don't want to be the old head, be like, think of the children, but still.
we have an interesting perspective too, because I think we're the generation that, like, we still grew up with, like, we were young men when ESPN was running jacked up segments on Monday Night Countdown every
Right.
week. And so we've seen a fair bit of the old way and celebrating this exactly, basically. And then we're going to get a good bit of the rest of our lives on the safe side, whereas older than us spent most of their life. And this is a new thing for the older generation, and the kids in high school these days is basically all they know is the NFL trying to make the game safer and take these hits out. I think in a vacuum, this hit probably doesn't even get him suspended a game.
Nah.
Because I think about, like, the Gronk hit against a Buffalo player. I think it was last year or the year before. Like, after the play, and the guy was, like, laying down, face down on the sideline, and Gronk went after him and cheap shot at him, and I don't think he got suspended.
I think that was like a retribution thing though, because I think they had stuff going that whole game. I
Yeah,
think that's part of the reason there was no suspension is he had done some stuff earlier in the game.
Plus, it's also very safe to say that not all penalties are created equal, right?
Yeah. And this is, a 7 strikes you're out
Right.
type of situation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So that's that.
So AFC North physical football being represented
In other
all
divisions,
across
and they
the
don't
league.
stand for it.
Yeah. It's an old brand, maybe a brand that's being put out to pasture slowly.
Bud Dupree's carrying the torch.
Bud Dupree is carrying the torch.
Nice.
He is. So I don't know. Those are the ones that caught my eye. There's probably more out there doing their thing and making headlines. But
Yeah.
those are the AFC Northers that I wanted to give a shout out.
For sure. I think it's worth it to kind of look at some of the former players and see kind of where they're going, especially when they were kind of franchise staples like Vontez Burfict, But yeah, so let's roll that in and just start talking about some of the games. You guys ready for that?
Yeah, talk about Vontez Burfict's old team.
I think two of us are very, very excited to talk about these games. This was such a good freaking Sunday.
So first off, let's go over the polls real quick. At least for this poll. So it was 32 to 68 Bengals, 32% Bengals, 68% Steelers. So most people picked the Steelers and picked correctly. So what I'm trying to say is everyone who's not a Steelers fan, you failed by not willing into existence an 0-4 Steelers team. Sorry, Chad. I know I stole your thunder, but
Dude,
take that.
You guys know how I like to lie about the score at the beginning of the game because usually the end has been bad for the Steelers, but it looked pretty bad. At the end of the first 2 minutes of the game, it was 3-0 Cincinnati. Pittsburgh had already fumbled in their own red zone, and it looked like it was just going to be more of the same. Pittsburgh with an inept offense and a defense that just isn't, like an actual missile defense system. Like they just couldn't stop everything. But fortunately, the Steelers rebounded in the absolute hugest way, and that 3-0 quickly became an actual final score of 27-3. A dominating performance for the ages. I don't even know where to start. So, because the Steelers basically completely reinvented their entire offense in 1 week, who better to explain it than Mike Tomlin? So, when asked by the media about if he learned anything schematically from the 49ers game or just like why they used the running back so differently, we're just adjusting to the cards that we were dealt. We went into this game knowing we wouldn't have Vance McDonald, so you saw us redistribute some opportunities, and that wasn't the case in San Francisco. And oftentimes what we do is often reflected by the quality of the players or the players specifically that are available to us, just like any football team. So if you're having trouble understanding how the Steelers were able to rewrite their entire playbook, It was because they didn't have Vance McDonald.
They just had to redistribute all those Vance McDonald catches.
All the Vance McDonald
Boom.
jet motions, all the Vance McDonald Wildcat, all that stuff was already in there. And it was just a matter of them reallocating Vance McDonald plays to other people. And
All the checkdowns to running back Vance McDonald.
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So what seemed to me like an incredibly complex and brilliant mastermind performance by offensive coordinator Randy Fiegner was actually him just scratching out 89 and putting in 38
Right.
for Jalen Samuels.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the next question, because that's obviously ridiculous. Mike Tomlin has gone to a new level of abstraction with that nonsense. Do you guys think that Sean McVay is the next Randy Fiegner?
Let's just say
I mean-
he's got a lot to learn. All right, he's got a lot of years ahead of him, and maybe one day he'll reach the pinnacle.
I think the real question here, and this may sound absolutely absurd, are the Steelers better without Vance McDonald?
I mean, could the Steelers beat Alabama?
If Alabama had Vance McDonald,
Right. These are
Saying
great
is
questions.
Addition
These are
by
great questions.
subtraction. Right.
We'll do an emergency podcast tomorrow on just this topic.
All right.
No, seriously though, this is crazy stuff. Like, the Steelers honestly reinvented themselves. All this, I mean, I brought it up a little bit as a joke in our podcast already. The Steelers' unwillingness to use play action, the Steelers' unwillingness to use pre-snap motion. The podcast I listened to through Steelers Depot has talked for years, ever since D'Angelo Williams and Le'Veon Bell were on the same team, about bringing two running backs onto the field at the same time and using a little misdirection that way. These are all things that the Steelers just didn't do. Like, they just didn't do it. And they were all over it on Monday night, and it was amazing. It was exactly what the doctor ordered. I mean, Joey, you need to explain this to me, because last year the Ravens did this, and I know I crapped all over the offense, and honestly, you'll probably crap all over the Steelers offense on Thursday, but what is it like? Like, how much confidence should I have that the Steelers have a new identity, and in 1 week they could completely rejigger the whole situation and it's fine? Everything's great and fine, right? Is everything fine?
well, I think the Bengals factor cannot be understated in all of this. A stark contrast to the creativity that we've saw this week in Pittsburgh and in Cleveland. The Bengals didn't change shit about their offense this week. There's still no creativity, you know. But yeah, they did this. So this is very akin to, and it's a different style, a different way to get there, but the destination is the same as when Ben was thrust into the starting position as a young quarterback. And the Steelers did everything that they could to make the game easier for Ben. And that's what they did last night. They made it as easy as they could for Mason Rudolph. They didn't ask him to do too much. A lot of his reads were nice and short. Yeah, he had an insane completion percentage. I saw a stat. So his first 19 completions were for 43 air yards combined.
Yeah.
And then the 20th completion was the Deontay Johnson touchdown and had 32 air yards. So he made the big play, even though, I mean, you could say he made the big play when he had to, but they didn't really have to in this game. But yeah, I mean, he didn't turn the ball over. Other than, well, it wasn't him, the hiccup in the beginning of the game. That's the key. If they can protect the football, James Conner's good enough. You know, if they can still keep the little wrinkles with Jalen Samuels and some of that interesting stuff. They finally got creative on offense because they were forced to, and they just stumbled upon something that could work for real in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I again think that the Bengals factor is pretty big here. The Bengals' run defense is abhorrent. It's really bad, and the fact that they got ran all over the place, not just up the middle, but on the outside. We know their linebackers are not going to go after or be able to get the running back on the outside. We've seen it time and time again. So I think that it was sure maybe a combination of doing all those things, but also, the light bulb went off that said, hey, we're going to be able to get away with making a simple playbook for Mason Rudolph in an easy situation. And it's against a team that's really bad against that too. So I think it was the right circumstance to be able to kind of build off of what their offense might look like moving forward for the rest of the season, because of basically, the Bengals was like the test case.
Before Chad defends his team here, I am actually mark this date in AFC Northcast history. I'm going to defend the Steelers for Chad. The offense can do nothing but grow from here, right? They simplified it enough for Mason Rudolph right now, and there's still 12 more games this year. So, every week they can add a little bit more. In 12 weeks, that can develop into something legitimate, especially if the Steelers trust and believe that Mason Rudolph is a quarterback that they can mold into something league average, and the defense can manage to hold water with the strong front seven. We'll
I
see.
think having the strong, like you said, front seven is definitely advantageous for him, obviously, because it gives him the ability to learn. The thing that's weird about the Steelers schedule, I think, is the peaks and troughs that come through it. So like we were talking about with, the Ravens and Browns and stuff like that. So like the Ravens started off with probably some easier opponents, and then they kind of are going to be working their way up for a little bit, and then, might be working their way back down for a little bit. But with the Steelers, it's kind of like all over the place, up and down. And they're going to end off with the last couple games of the season with some pretty easy opponents, which will be good for them moving forward, I would say. But I don't think that we're talking about a playoff team. And I also don't think that even if some weird fucking way how they did, I don't think that they're going to last in that situation. But like you said, the offense can only, I guess, complicate from here, which that's not complicate in a bad way. That's complicate, I guess, in a good way. It can only get better and more complex for Mason Rudolph from this point. I think that is a good perspective.
There's things that they did in this game that they could put together very easily that you've seen teams like the Rams and Eagles do. For example, when you run the jet motion, the Steelers were often doing that little shimmy pass where you catch it and give it to the receiver right as he comes across. And they never combined that with a fake and a rollout. But they did roll Mason Rudolph out a few times, and he was very successful on those rollouts. And it's like a natural progression to combine those things. So once teams start following those wide receivers, you roll Mason out the other way. And when they did roll him out, they got big gainers on very simple but elegant route combinations, which I didn't know the Steelers even ever saw on tape or knew existed. But they clearly do, because they were running excellent route combinations in this game and really doing creative stuff. But because the Bengals were so inept, all that anyone has on tape now is just the most elementary level of what is possible with all these wrinkles in this offense. And they're willing to do so much stuff that, even if they don't get that much better at it, and Joey can speak to this, the Ravens didn't do complicated things last year. They just did simple things that if you do well, they're just hard to guard. So if the Steelers just continue to get better at executing these motion plays and moving teams side to side, it's just hard. It's just hard to defend. That's what the Rams have been doing. The Ravens did it in a different way with their power running game combined with Lamar and his athleticism last year. I'm just I am extraordinarily excited. You've never seen a 1-3 team this fired up. Like, we
Oh,
are fired up in Stiller Nation. This was the best. It was the best. The offense was. Should we even talk about the defense? I almost
Please.
ran out of fingers counting the sacks. Oh my God. Did you see Andy Dalton on the sideline? He didn't even want to play anymore. He didn't want to play.
Did you see AJ Green on the sideline?
He just looked bored.
Ooh.
Dude, you guys lead on the defense. I want to bask in it. Oh my God.
So yeah, I mean the defense was smothering the glaring issue. So I'll compare one of the teams in this football game to Cleveland, because Cleveland and Cincinnati entered the season with the most question marks, I think, on the offensive line. And wow, Michael Jordan got his ass handed to him for a couple quarters and maybe a half, and then Billy Price came in and looked like a newborn giraffe. It snowballed. The game got away from the Bengals, and then, I mean, basically the last quarter and a half was just the Steelers teeing off on the Bengals because they knew they couldn't do anything.
Right, they figured out the formula. almost as many sacks as the Ravens had on what's it called, Mariota last year, right? But yeah, 8 sacks. Jeez,
8 sacks after Dalton was shown on the sideline smashing his helmet into the ground because he was so tired of getting sacked. On the next drive, as he threw a pass, Cam Hayward, in a play that will never show up on his stat line, actually, with his shoulder pad, evacuated Dalton's soul out through the front of his chest plate. He mashed him to death, and he didn't even get mad after that, Dalton. He just sat on the bench and didn't want to be on the field anymore. It was crazy.
man.
While we're talking about souls, have you heard any information on the ceremony from Mike Hilton?
Joe Mixon had the play of his life on that one. I think Mike Hilton saw it coming and tried to pull up, and he just got, oh man.
Because Mixon knew it was play action, and so he saw Hilton coming on the blitz and didn't even try to sell play action. Basically just speared Mike Hilton.
Dude, I thought he killed him. I couldn't believe it. Hilton didn't even leave the game. I was like, dude, you need to get your head checked out. I have very few notes on what didn't work, but one of them was that Mike Hilton and Joe Mixon, that's a bad matchup on the blitz.
Yeah.
And I don't think Mike Hilton blitzed anymore after that. I think they decided that was a no-no. And you know what? Really didn't need him. Really didn't need Mike Hilton on the blitz. Did you notice that the Bengals thought it was advisable to have CJ Uzomah, tight end, block TJ Watt on his own on multiple occasions? Yeah, guess how well that worked out. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a debacle. It was so glorious. You know what, though? Further, not to just totally denigrate the Bengals.
I was about to say, yeah.
But what I liked about it was that when the game was out of hand, the Bengals drove down the field, and the Steelers were going to win. It was the fourth quarter. They were up by 3 scores. And normally this is around the time when it feels like the Steelers' philosophy is, you only need to win by 1. And they just let teams start scoring touchdowns just slowly. But they didn't. They allowed the Bengals to bungle a little bit. There was a 4th and 8, and then they had a false start because they're the Bungles. And then on 4th and 14 from the 14-yard line, Mark Barron, who struggled in the first quarter, came up with a big interception, just the way Joe Hayden should have caught one in the first half. He showed Joe Hayden the proper form, made an interception in the end zone, and that's just the kind of stuff that if you want to eventually be elite, you do those kinds of things. You stay in the mindset that it's a meaningful play even when it's not, and you just get it done. Joe Hayden dropped an interception, not pleased, but man, overall, the defense is rolling. You almost didn't even notice Minka. You know why? Nothing over the top. They kept it simple today. Nothing over the top. John Ross didn't do anything. No one got over the top. I don't know, boys. I don't know. Pretty dangerous. Pretty dangerous at 1-3.
It's tough to say because so I guess to flip this over to be a little bit of talk about the Bengals. It's just man, when are they gonna figure out that they need to put together a sizable, credible offensive line? They can have all these offensive weapons, and Dalton can keep running for his life, and then after last season they're like, oh, looked a little bit better. Dalton didn't run so hard, and the offensive line looked a little bit more well meshed. So then I guess they went and just fucked everything up with that and went back to the same old Bengals instead of improving even more. It was pretty bad.
They are aware of it. They drafted Billy Price in the first round last year to be their center of the future, and he just doesn't seem to be that. So that's their first round pick last year. And then this year they drafted Jonah. Help me.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
He
was supposed to be their new, I think, left guard. And
right, but you're not going to get two Quentin Nelsons 2 years in a row, right?
So
they have to start making more. I think I don't want to say credible, but more impactful moves at all the other spots.
Yeah, but I mean, so Jonah, I think everybody considers him a pretty he was going to be a day one starter. Pretty sure. He played offensive line at Alabama. It's pretty legit. Billy Price to come in and year 2 be a platoon left guard guy is a massive swing and miss at the top half of the first round of the draft. That's monstrous.
And that's the year after John Ross.
And there's no charade or anything that the Bengals have ever been a solid, consistent front office, but
no.
Man.
It's crazy. Do you guys listen to the Locked On Bengals podcast at all?
Sometimes. That's actually, of all the Locked On podcasts for the division, I think that's probably the best informed one. I don't know. They get all rock hard for the offensive line and lose me a lot of times, but
well, if you want to hear two men broken professionally on air, that's what happened. I'm going to give you a quote when they started talking about competing with Miami, who they play in Week 16. Who can lose harder? They're gunning for the number 1 pick now. They're done. And then they said, if they win that game, referring to the Bengals, they could drive me to the brink. These guys are all in on tanking at this point. And right at the end of the episode, remember when we had hope? And the other guy's response is, no, it was so long ago. And this is after episode asking if anyone was even listening anymore, which I texted Joey. If you text the Lock On Bengals Twitter account hopeless, they'll follow you, because that meant that you made it to the end of the episode. So just so you guys know, one Steeler fan made it to the end of the episode, and I thought it was some of your finest work.
Yeah, it's tough, man, because with the Bengals, it's with the Dolphins, not only is it clearly obvious that they're trying to lose. Well, I mean, that's a little bit too much. It's clearly obvious that they don't have any tools at much of any position to be successful, right? They may have some skilled individuals, but they don't have enough all around the board to be successful. That's what I'll say, right? I'm not about to just shit on everybody in the Dolphins roster. You guys are fucking trash.
Look, I'll say a couple.
You already called them a JV team last week.
But
I was waiting for you to tell Chad that his win is meaningless because he played a JV team, and the Browns have the strongest strength of schedule in the division, and that's why they're the best team in the league.
But with the Bengals, what I wanted to go with that was that they actually have people at positions that are highly skilled at what they do, but they still keep fucking losing. Again, Andy Dalton is not that bad. Right, Tyler Boyd, we even saw from last year, is pretty fucking good. Right, Joe Mixon, we know, is fantastic. They've got a couple people on defense we know that are really good. But they just can't pull it together.
I'll say one or two positive things about the Bengals, and then I'll on a possible discussion on the greater situation with pass interference in the league, which popped its ugly head up in this game again. I thought the Bengals, schematically, I said they could be dangerous, and they were. Early in the game, they went to Eifert when our linebacker Mark Barron, was isolated on him, and they did it with success. One great reception, and then should have had a touchdown, but Eifert kind of short-armed it. It was a really nice throw by Andy Dalton. It would have changed the whole context of the game. But it didn't work out, and they didn't really go back to him. And with Eifert, they're kind of limiting his snaps, so he wasn't on the field a lot. And then Uzama's a pretty good receiver, but they were leaving him in to block. And I thought that their rhythm passing game was actually pretty good, again, especially when they focused on the middle of the field. But I guess they weren't, I guess they either weren't getting open as often as it felt like in the game, and that's why Dalton was taking sacks, or he just wasn't able to see it because the line was getting broken through so quickly. But I did think that when they were able to get the rhythm passing game going, the Steelers did look a little vulnerable. They were giving John Ross like 36 yards of space to get going, so he could run like a 10-yard out every day, every second, and it was fine. He caught one for a first down on like 2nd and 12, and Stevie Nelson started 15 yards off and was backing up. He was 10 yards away from him when he caught it and went out of bounds. And even though I thought the Steelers did pretty well against the run, Mixon still gashed him a couple times. He showed that like elite speed and get up, and when he could hit that hole at speed, he got going quickly and almost broke a few. So I think if they can just pull a Steelers and just get an identity, which frankly it's less than the Steelers because they've already shown it. They've like done little bits of it already. They just need to stay the plan, keep with those nice, route combinations and motion stuff, and their offense is okay, and maybe block a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know if it's too early to start questioning Zach Taylor.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't have a lot to work with as far as, again, the offensive line. Like, if you can't keep your quarterback safe, like, you can't. I
don't even understand the concept of
Just
having
get
a coach
creative
for less than 10 years. So I think Zach Taylor should get like more years before they even question him.
All right. Anything else
I won't talk about pass interference. We can move on, but it was crap.
Anything else to wrap
Mike
it up?
Tomlin lost another challenge.
Shocker of the century.
Yeah, you don't say.
It was so stupid. If you want to hate on Mike Tomlin, they got called for offensive pass interference, so it made the play 2nd and 20 instead of 2nd and 10 because he didn't even catch it. And Mike Tomlin challenges it. So you're like, dude, if you win, it's 2nd and 10.
Yeah,
on your own like 35.
It's almost like like everybody else in the world is on the longest episode of Impractical Jokers ever, and Mike Tomlin is the only one in on it.
Well, what's even worse is that the stadium wanted the flag thrown, and then when he threw the challenge flag, everyone cheered their fucking hearts out, and I was just watching like, you inbred retards.
The thing we have to understand. Right. The thing we have to understand about this pass interference thing is the genesis of this pass interference thing was the egregious call that was missed in the NFC Championship game. And that is what it's for. And if there's any type of judgment call, they're going to err on the side of not changing what was called on the field, except for that one case in the Seattle game. That's the only, and most analysts will acknowledge that's the standout aberration from the rest of the trend of, if it's close at all, questionable at all, we're just going to stick with what's called.
Well, it happened to me, that aberration, so now it's my life. And now I'm riled up every time. And I knew Tomlin would lose that, even though that is classic use of hands. There's clearly no actual pressure applied. He was just finding him. Anyway, it was stupid, but the Steelers won anyway. Fuck you, refs. We're best. Best 1-3 team you've ever tried to screw over. Okay, I'm done.
All right. Let's talk about the marquee game. That's right. The Cleveland Browns versus the Baltimore Ravens. Your AFC North champions current champions at least, the Cleveland Browns.
Easy there.
Top of the division, tied with 2-2. Yeah, man. So I'm gonna start talking about the Browns offense because as a Browns fan, the first drive, I saw that first drive and I was like, fuck, man. Like, here we go, right? Just another Browns. They had like a batted ball down, another like penalty, I think on like Eric Kush or something like that, and it was just like, god damn it, right? But then the ball turned over to the Ravens, and we'll talk about the Ravens offense and Browns defense a little bit later. But then the Browns kind of got back on the field, ended up scoring on the next drive, and then stalled out again for almost the entire half. And I was like, well, another fucking episode of the Browns, because the Ravens started to come back. But the second half is what really made the difference, and that's kind of what I wanted to highlight. Because something that I've always said, even like the 0-16 year, is that good teams get up at the half, but great teams make adjustments at halftime. And the Browns, even that 0-16 year, had plenty of times where they were either up or very close at the half, but then just got smothered after halftime, right? So this, I think, shows a lot to me because of the adjustments that were made. But I will say some of the adjustments were at the fault of the Ravens offense, which again we'll talk about when we get to, in my opinion. But what we saw from the Browns this time on offense was a lot of quick decisions and short passes, first off, which is what they absolutely needed to get Baker back into doing and comfortable with, right? Stay in the pocket and just make those quick passes, right? They ran the football a ton. Look, they beat the Ravens at their own game and in this one. I mean, it just is what it is. I will say, so let's look at Nick Chubb's stats. Nick Chubb had a total of 165 yards rushing, 18 yards receiving, 3 rushing touchdowns, right? If we just
88 of those yards were on one run.
I was just about to say, right? 88 of those yards were on one run. So you could still say you could still say that there's about 100 yards of rushing from Nick Chubb. But on the other side, right, Mark Ingram only had 60 something or other, right? Not 100 at least, right? So that's what I mean by that. Also, Dontrell Hilliard had some good runs as well. But yeah, so a lot of that short passes, and they used everybody, man. Good old Ricky Seals-Jones. It's like he's come up a couple of times here and there, almost every podcast, but this time he just blew up, man. He just found his way downfield and made some big plays for the rest of the team. Jarvis Landry had what I would consider his breakout game of the year. 8 for 10. Fantastic, man. Fantastic. What else do we want? Where else do we want to go with this one? Yeah, the run that Nick Chubb had for 88 yards, dude. What's up? What were you saying?
His stats. Pile them on.
All right, let's finish off with them with Baker Mayfield stats.
OBJ killed it.
We'll get to OBJ. And then Baker Mayfield with 20 for 30, 66% completion rate. His highest QBR this year, 102.4. 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But yeah, go ahead and I guess rebuttal that, or however you'd like, Joey.
This is my fucking life now. Here we go. Are you ready for this? Sunday was Baker Mayfield's 5th career 300-yard game. His 3rd career 300-yard game against the Baltimore Ravens.
That's an interesting stat.
So probably the biggest point of contention on the preview episode was everything about the Cleveland offense was if. I don't know if their game plan was what it was because of the success they had last year, or if they had a proper come to Jesus moment about their offensive performance over the first 3 weeks, and nobody really knows who's been in control of play calling and this and that. The offense that we saw that was not overly forcing to Odell, was not relying on just being vanilla and playing with more talented players. The offense that we saw on Sunday was the same offense we saw last year.
Yeah, great point.
With misdirection, pre-snap motion, little pitches, jet sweep stuff to Jarvis, triple option passes. I know Odell threw that pass, but that's some stuff we saw Jarvis throwing that pass last year. That's what this was. Nick Chubb getting going. And I think the Browns wore the Ravens down. And that's what caused the big Nick Chubb run and everything like that. And I'm hesitant to bring it up because it's going to look like an excuse. It's not an excuse, but it is of note that Brandon Williams was dressed out before this game and got scratched during pregame warmups. And the Ravens, as far as the run defense goes, were an absolute sieve. Baker Mayfield didn't do any single thing particularly brilliant in this game. He had a very solid game, 66% completion percentage, 300 some yards, like pretty good. A touchdown and an interception. The thing that killed them was poor tackling on pass plays and run plays, both. Really poor tackling and miscommunication in the secondary, which the miscommunication in the secondary has been a common trend all season. The poor tackling is new and something that I'm really not accustomed to seeing from a Ravens team, and it's immensely frustrating. So yeah, I mean, Nick Chubb is a grown ass man, and we know now that you're not going to arm tackle Nick Chubb and get him down to the ground, but not a lot of great things from the Ravens defense. They were on the field too much because the offense was a little bit too inconsistent. And we'll talk about when the Ravens were on offense a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But as far as in-game stuff goes, the only other thing I have for notes when the Ravens were on defense was Odell versus Marlon Humphrey. Whenever you're ready to talk about that.
No, that's a big note. It's a big point of contention, and actually, I guess I'll throw in my early AFC North Defensive Player of the Week nomination. But yeah, Marlon Humphrey literally just completely neutralized. Not only did he neutralize Odell Beckham, but he got into his head to the and also his neck.
Thank you.
But I mean, that being said, obviously the Browns adjusted incredibly well. Like Joey said before, we saw what we saw from 2018 from the Browns, right? Where Baker was just hitting who was open, right? If you were there and you were available, you're getting the ball and you better be ready to catch it, right? So, and we didn't see that, forcing towards. Everyone has been talking about, like, on the radio, like, oh, was this part of the Browns' plan to, like, get Odell in triple? And I don't know, man. Even as a Browns fan, I'm just kind of like, probably not. It probably just kind of consequently happened. And then they saw the broken up, the busted coverages and how things were broken up. And Baker said, well, Ricky's open, So
it did flash through my mind as I was watching the game, because the offense was so different from what we've seen this year.
Right.
Did the Browns have this first division game against the defending division champions circled and purposely vanilla for the first 3 games, not trying to show too much? It seems insane, but this is the type of headspace that I was in on Sunday afternoon.
I don't think it's that.
Chat's already saying no to me.
I was about to say
they lost to the Titans by 30. They couldn't do that sort of thing.
If any of you saw the text message chains that I'm always on with these two guys, it's absolutely the type of shit that I love. So yes, I absolutely think the conspiracy theory I'm right on board with it, dude. No, I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe you had highlighted it a little bit. Highlighted? I don't know, whatever. A little bit better earlier when you said, maybe they had a come to Jesus moment that said, look, like, this is what we got to do. This is what made us successful. This is what put us here. And maybe even Freddie Kitchens said, this is what got me here. So this is what I got to just
Yeah.
fucking do. So maybe that's what it is. And you know what? I hope that that's what they continue forward with, because obviously it worked for him. So we'll see. And for Odell's sake, you know, a big point of contention that's been coming up is how will Odell handle playing second fiddle to literally everyone else on the offense. And one of the big quotes that's been brought up about him a lot lately is before he left New York, he said, "I just want to play for a winning team." So it's going to be kind of one of those things where it's like, put your money where your mouth is, right? Do you want winning stats, or do you just want to play for a winning team? So
I have a question just to target Joey's single attempt at excuse making. The player that was scratched in pregame warmups, isn't he a nose tackle, like an interior lineman?
Yeah.
So, and correct me if you saw this differently than I did, but when I was watching the game, I noted that it felt to me like the Rams were failing to seal the edge in the running game. I actually didn't feel like the Browns' interior running was particularly successful. It seemed like Nick Chubb was able to get outside. He was bouncing runs to the outside, and that's where he was having his most success. So I'm not trying to make fun of you, but if you want to take it as me jabbing, you can.
No,
Do you
no.
think that he would have made a difference in that?
well,
I think his presence makes a difference. I think for any position on the field, the drop off. So the young man that filled his place was Dalen Mack, who made his professional debut on Sunday against the Browns. So you have a Pro Bowl nose tackle to a rookie making his first pro start. I mean, Brandon Williams is a guy that you have to double team. He keeps linemen off of the linebackers, who are relatively inexperienced linebackers. So I think more butterfly effect than any specific successful runs. I think not having him in there makes a very, very big difference in the Ravens' run defense.
There were times when I noticed offensive linemen getting to the second level. So okay, that makes some sense. Can we talk about the thing that matters here? That
Please.
Nick Chubb run, the backbreaker. Let's talk about it. There's so many levels to this play, and I want to talk about a couple of them. First thing I noticed in real time, Tyus Bowser was unblocked. He was just running along the line.
Just ran way past
Nick Chubb just runs behind him, and he turns his head over his shoulder and just looks. It was the funniest thing I saw all day, man. That was so. Apparently, he didn't come back in the game after that. Harbaugh didn't love that, I guess.
Sure didn't.
Then I was watching it in replay because, of course, they replayed it like 4 times. Did you see Nick Chubb dust Earl Thomas? That dude was fat. What the heck happened? Is he a has-been?
Earl Thomas pulled up on that play relatively early. He was actually further downfield, but because of the angle, didn't make the angle, and then very shortly after not making the angle, just pulled up. He was asked about it after the game, and he said that he didn't want to pull a hamstring.
Good choice.
So Earl Thomas, though, earlier in the game was the one guy that ran down Ricky Seals-Jones and saved a touchdown on that play. So I don't think it's quite fair to question his effort, which understandably some people are doing on that play. Nick Chubb recorded the fastest miles per hour so far this year of any player on any play. Also of note, Baker Mayfield clocked his highest top speed for the year running behind Nick Chubb down the field.
And that's my question. Fine, Earl Thomas maybe couldn't quite catch Nick Chubb, but how come Baker Mayfield is running past him celebrating, which, by the way, the photo bombs, if any listeners, you need to look up still frame shots.
We'll tweet it out we'll send it out from our account.
If you can't look up the still frames, you still can watch, if you watch the replay of the play, at the very end of the run, you can see Baker Mayfield wheeling his arms like this at about the
Yeah,
10
he always does
yard
that, yeah.
line.
That's what he does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's his
Oh
thing.
my God. I love Baker Mayfield so much, and I think he's more athletic than Earl Thomas. Just saying.
I love the fact that this play was the rebuttal to the 2-point conversion. Because when that 2-point conversion went down, I was like, ooh, that was obviously because it was successful. Whenever it's successful, you say how smart it was, right? So it was successful. I was like, ooh, that was smart. I was like, damn, that'll be interesting to see how this plays out because that's less than a touchdown away, right? So I was concerned. I mean, rightfully so as a Browns fan, concerned at that point, right? But then, yeah, so the Browns got the ball, fucking holding by Eric Kush again, and they backed him up 10 yards. So 5 yards, 1st and 15. And then that run broke out, and it was just like, it's over. That was it, kind of it. Personally, I think the proverbial nail in the coffin was earlier in the game when you kind of saw the tide really spin on Nick Chubb's touchdown when he ran to the outside and he had those 4 missed blocks. That, to me, was like the proverbial, like I said, nail in the coffin, because the drive before that was – not the drive. I know it was like 2 drives before that. Never mind. But that was when things really kind of started to turn around pretty significantly, in my opinion.
Well, that's when they got 2 scores up. But, I mean, the Ravens drive and then kind of inexplicable, but I guess when you have Lamar Jackson, you take these chances, and this is what the Ravens are this year, 2-point conversion. The drive following that Nick Chubb 4 missed tackle play was fantastic by the Ravens. They ran the ball incredibly effectively, and then got the 2-point conversion. You're down 6. It's like, all right, well, now we're cooking. A touchdown and an extra point has you in the lead. And yeah. Actually, the last note that I had from when I was taking notes on my phone during the game was Chubb. Fuck. And we had some family stuff going on, and that's when I turned the game off, and I was like, all right, let's do whatever we have planned for the afternoon.
Yeah, and I'll come back to this.
I'll figure out what happens after.
So let's flip this over, and we'll talk about Ravens offense and Browns defense. And I know that I'm supposed to talk about, I guess Browns defense, but I want to put one comment about Ravens offense, and then Joey will take over, I guess. But so I was talking to Sam about this a little bit, and I told her that when you're down and you're concerned, you go to what you know, right? What you know and what you know you're good at. And the Ravens came out of the locker room, and in the second half, they ran the ball significantly more than they did the first half. Now, and I have to, kind of stepping away from things, and we're a couple days removed. I'm not sure if it was like, well, that was the game plan. The second half, we're going to run it down their throats because, again, the Browns' run defense has been significantly improved this year. From my opinion, perspective, whatever, right? I think it's been significantly improved. Or I think maybe it's one of those things where, did the Ravens started to get concerned because the Browns ended up getting up, I think 17-10 just after the half, and said, well, hey, let's, this is going to be a tight game. Let's go to what we know. I don't know, but I guess I'll toss that to you.
Yeah, I think it's also a little bit of self-preservation for the Ravens. The Browns' very first, touchdown drive was like an 8.5-minute drive. And by the end of it, I think I texted you guys and was like, yeah, like at the end of that drive, the Ravens defense was gassed. And that's what the Browns were on Sunday. They were sustaining drives. It wasn't the big spectacular plays to OBJ. And most of the big plays were runs after catches and missed tackles and things of that nature. But they were sustaining long drives on the Ravens. And the way to get that defense a blow is to run the football, which the Ravens did really effectively. So I don't think they ran enough, especially considering it was a 10-3 football game at halftime. Like, you got to run more, man. Like, I think I think it was Chad talked about on the preview, falling in love with the pass game and falling in love with lighting up the Dolphins.
Darn tootin'.
Yeah.
You guys done mucked up.
And I agreed with Chad. I said the best version of this team is pound the rock. Mark Ingram only had 12 carries, but he had 5.9 yards per carry. Gus Edwards had 6 carries, 4.7 yards a carry. Justice Hill only had 2 carries for 8 yards. The Ravens averaged 6 yards a carry in this football game, including Lamar Jackson, which is almost as many as Lamar had yards per completion. So Hollywood Brown got totally taken out of the game, pretty much, especially as a deep threat. And the Ravens were not able to shift gears to focusing on the run game soon enough. They had some offensive success at the end of the game, but it was too little too late. And at that point, I think the defense was already, their back had been broken, and there was nothing that they were going to do in the fourth quarter to stop the Browns from scoring. So offensively, I don't think Lamar played poorly. I think what we saw from Lamar was a more realistic version of what Lamar is going to be this year. He threw 2 picks, and that's too many for sure. The Ingram fumble was on a drive that could have tied the game, and then the Browns took that ball and went down and scored. And so that was a big swing in the game, and it was before halftime, but it was like, oh, fuck. Because the Ravens were in business. I think it was before halftime. Either way, the Ravens were rocking, and they were in plus territory. That Ingram fumble hurt them bad, and then the Browns took it and turned it into 7, and that's when the game really started feeling like an uphill battle.
You guys laughed at me when Mike Tomlin was quoted as saying it's important to play in concert. Wrote it down. Mike Tomlin quote: "Give up that turnover in the red zone. You can't be giving up touchdowns." That's a huge swing.
So I think, to me, what this says about the Browns defense, and the question that it draws to me, and honestly almost even concern, I would say, is what do the Browns do about their secondary? And then, you know, I might be thinking, like, that's a stupid question. They're fine, right? But
yes,
they're doing so good right now with their proposed, backups, kind of, right? At least at corner, right? Because Denzel Ward is out, and Greedy, who for whatever fucking reason has been the starting corner this season. But TJ Carey and Terrence Mitchell, who, again, I think is fantastic, have been doing so well at corner. Like, when Denzel Ward comes back and gets healthy, do they put him in? When Greedy Williams comes back and gets healthy, do they put him in? Right? Denzel Ward has been a liability for tackling, not because he won't tackle, but almost because he will tackle. He keeps getting himself hurt and injured, right? He's not a big guy, right? He's been trying to put weight on, but he's still not a big guy. And when you're having so much success against, objectively, the 2 most difficult opponents the Browns have played so far this season, at 2 teams that have been really over-the-top, high-flying teams, and you've been having the most success there, do you switch it up? Is it the right thing to switch it up? And I'll throw that to you guys before I talk more about the Browns' defense.
I'll answer first because I'm excited about this question, and I'm going to speak more to it possibly later in a segment of this podcast. But you've basically solved a problem that you gave yourselves by starting Greedy, by putting Terrence Mitchell back in the lineup. So hopefully they leave him in there. In this game, one of your starting safeties was back, Demarius Randall, and he played really well. So you leave him in there. He was your starter to begin with. And as a fan who is very experienced in the Morgan Burnett scenario, strong safety, you don't have to worry because he's injured and he's not coming back. He did for the Steelers. He played like a game and a half.
He was doing really well, too.
No, he's nothing special.
Okay.
Just leave Whitehead in there for him, and you're fine. And he's just injured. He's not good. You don't need him.
Yeah. I think Denzel comes back. You plug him right in. He's a number one corner. He's probably a top 10 cover corner in the league. Greedy. I mean, Terrence Mitchell rode with you last year. He's
And he
come
killed
in.
it
He's
last
played
year.
well.
Yeah. So
I don't think Greedy specifically. They're both young corners, but I mean Denzel Ward, I think, has earned his spot. He's the number one corner on that football team, and if Greedy gets relegated to nickel duty or slot duty, whatever it ends up looking like, I don't think that's really a demotion. Most of the teams in the league this year are going to run 11 personnel and trot out 3 wide receivers anyways. Just be semantics that he's not a starter.
Even if he doesn't play nickel, the Ravens did it last year. They had 3 outside corners and they substitute him to keep him fresh and to just totally dominate. Like,
Brandon Carr
this
started
is
every
not
game.
a problem, Justin. This is not a problem,
yeah.
and I have no sympathy for you. And shut up about it.
Brandon Carr started every game last year because he's got this game started streak thing going on. But on the depth chart, he's the 3rd corner. It's Humphrey, Smith, Carr. So
I thought it would be
it's
interesting.
fluid, especially in today's NFL.
I thought it'd be interesting to talk about because it's one of those things that when you have so much success, again, against 2 of objectively the best offenses that they've played so far this season, and statistically 2 of the best offenses right now, not number 1 and 2, but 2 of the best, right? Do you change it up? I think is an interesting question. And then also, do you want to break that up? And then if the Browns start to falter after this in their secondary, for any reason, I think everyone would kind of come back and be like, oh, why did they change it up? So I thought it would be interesting to kind of at least address. But anyways,
it is interesting. And it's a good barometer for the Browns turning around as a successful franchise, because successful franchises a la the Ravens, when they have an excess of talent, they still find a way to maximize it. So this is a great little barometer that we can kind of observe for the rest of the year to see what the culture of the organization is like. Is Dorsey that much of a genius? Is Kitchens the right guy to be the head coach? Like, what are they doing with this excess of talent? How are they maximizing it so that they always have an advantage? So it's worth talking about, but it's not worth being worried about.
So one of the big things that you brought up was, negating Lamar Jackson's ability to run. And I will say that Lamar Jackson had like 2 or 3 really big runs, but I think that they were able to stop him sufficiently for what you can do for Lamar Jackson, I guess is the best way I'll put it. He was sacked 4 times, which I think is pretty notable. And it was not all by the same person. Everyone got their everyone ate, right? But even Demarius Randall, which was, I don't know, I thought that was a funny sack.
No, that's important. One thing that they did well was they blitzed, not always with linebackers. They were blitzing with defensive backs. They were blitzing with fast guys. And that is very important because even the fastest big guy, if it's Myles Garrett or whoever, Lamar Jackson is quicker and faster. We saw on that Demarius Randall sack, Demarius Randall whiffed like on the first effort, but he's a small guy and he's quick. And he was able to recover faster than some of these big guys would and still came back and got the sack because Lamar was, in my opinion, he did a lot of talking last week about, I like to throw touchdowns. I don't like to run the football, this and that. To me, and I know this sounds crazy given the culture around quarterback injuries and things like that, I would have liked to see him be a more eager runner on Sunday. He was in the pocket a lot, and it seemed like he was waiting and waiting and waiting for something downfield, and the Ravens receiving core is not a strength, and so he was waiting for guys to come uncovered. after making someone miss and still waiting, it's like, yo, that is your cue to get the fuck out.
That's what I'm talking about. And I didn't think you were going to go this direction, so I wanted to offer an alternate take. But I totally agree. This wasn't about who the Browns blitzed. This was about Lamar being in his own head. He would make a guy miss, or he would elude the initial rush or start backing up. And instead of looking for that lane, because, dude, let's all be honest with ourselves, all three of us. Lamar made the Browns tacklers look just as idiotic as he made the Chiefs tacklers look, and just as idiotic as he made all 12 teams he played last year look. Like, no one can tackle Lamar until he decides it's fine or there's 4 people in a telephone booth with him. He decided he wanted to make those throws, and he, even with Randall was, dude, he gifted
Randall missed on the first.
Yeah,
right,
he missed,
yeah.
and then Lamar stepped forward and stopped and tried to look down the field when he probably could have run for 46 yards and then back down the field to the locker room without getting touched. Like, that was just Lamar in his own headspace. And this is going to be really interesting to watch as the season goes on, is his little self-discovery of where he's the most comfortable, where the coaching staff is most comfortable with him, because the Browns have a great pass rush and they have as good of a chance of tackling him as anybody, but that chance is low. Like, it's just low. And he made them miss when that was his plan, and they tackled him when he waited.
Yeah, and I think that this is kind of what I was talking about earlier too, because you saw a lot of that, I think, in the first half, and then once they kind of came back out at the second half, it felt like, and I wish I had the numbers, but it really felt like they ran the ball significantly more. Lamar Jackson ran significantly more on his own. So, like, you fall back on what you know, kind of a thing. Like, maybe even Harbaugh had a conversation with him, was like, look, man, like, this is what you're good at, you know? So I don't know, but it did feel like the second half we got a little bit more of a picture of what the Ravens will have to do against good teams. So
yeah, I think Lamar, hopefully, so the most positive way to spin this for me is, hopefully Lamar realizes that not every team is the Dolphins and the Cardinals. Like, his strength is still even the threat of his run game. That's what separates him from everybody else. As far as a thrower, he's nothing incredibly special. He's nothing special as a thrower. And I won't sugarcoat it, right? He has to have that run dimension to his game. And against the really good teams, he has to be willing to use it. And use it smart, sure. Slide when you need to, but if you can turn a 5-yard sack into a 2-yard baseball slide, do it. You know?
Some of it is just about how he moves too, you know, like, he should be, at least in my opinion as a podcast expert, he should be moving horizontally. Like, he should make the guy miss, and then he doesn't even have to feel like he's running that fast. He can just sort of drift to the left or the right, I'm deciding if he wants to run. He's still fast enough, even with only half the field, to get out of bounds or do whatever.
Right.
But when he drifts backwards or tries to be shifty in the pocket, that's when he just doesn't have either the receivers or the quickness of mind in his progressions to get through it. He'll probably be fine. It's not a huge adjustment, but it was notable in this game.
Last defensive player I wanted to note on was, of course, good old Joe.
Schobert.
I mean, like, he killed it, man. Y'all joke me and stuff, man, but I fucking love Schobert, especially knowing that he came from, like, a practice squad guy and just kind of worked his way up. And again, you know, like, 3 years in a row, like, leading the team and NFL in tackles, but for some reason gets, like, 0 love. So he had 17 total tackles this game, 9 solo. He didn't get any credibility as far as the stats go for that fumble, but I think he was instrumental in the Mark Ingram fumble. Also, I noted that he broke up a pass to Marquise Brown in the red zone in the fourth quarter, and that was pretty awesome. So there you go, Joe Schobert.
So if he made 17 tackles, did he miss like 26?
So actually, no. Here's something I actually wanted to get to.
Well, how many defensive snaps were there?
Yeah. Here's something I wanted to get to because everybody always has this like imaginary stat or whatever that says like Joe Schobert has the most missed tackles or whatever it is. I have searched, scoured, and scraped the internet high and low, and I cannot find something that has a literal missed tackles statistic for players, orders, numbers, rosters, whatever, teams. I cannot find this like ghost statistic. So,
Maybe you should just trust us.
yeah, exactly. I'll just trust everybody that thinks that Joe Schobert's garbage and we need to get rid of him. So sure. But all right, that's all I have for the Browns defense to wrap up. You got anything for the Ravens offense that you wanted to more talk about?
Could we talk about Chris Moore missing a pass so easy that the refs gave him credit for catching it?
So I think Lamar definitely has some fault in that. Moore tried to establish his feet, and I haven't looked at the replay enough because it makes me sick.
I've looked at it. It's hilarious.
To see if he had to jump to catch it, but he did jump to catch it. And when he came back down, he was out of bounds. He was wide the fuck open. Wide open. It was a busted coverage play, and Lamar missed the throw. If Lamar makes a better throw, it's not even a question. He doesn't have to tiptoe the sideline.
You know what blew my mind about this? And I was really hoping that this would lead to some really great Justin tinfoil hat stuff. Is that in real time on the TV, you couldn't tell. But when he jumped up and caught it, he landed and you couldn't really see. And then he started running, but the ref blew the whistle immediately. So I was like, he must have been out of bounds because he didn't do anything between the whistle. Weird. But then they still called it a catch, and the Browns had to challenge to get it fixed. I knew that he was out of bounds based on the whistle, which means I knew based on the ref, and yet somehow the refs called it a catch.
Yeah.
Wrap your mind around that.
I don't know. When I'm not gonna. When I saw it, I was like, "Oh no, he was out of bounds." So I don't know. To me, it wasn't even a contention. But
well, it's like the ref blew the whistle because he knew when his feet landed, he was out of bounds.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, Freddie Kitchens challenged it, and it worked. So probably the AFC North divisional best challenge of the week.
Just creating trophies to give to the Browns.
Just fucking here. Handing them out.
Jeez.
Well, some of us are in it for participation trophies, and some of us are in it for Lombardies. You know.
So
don't worry. Next episode. Sorry, go ahead. Never mind. Forget it. Bad joke.
Before we talk about some Ravens aftermath, I feel like we kind of glossed over Odell and Marlon Humphrey. If everyone's ready to talk about that, you have anything else for Ravens offense that you wanted to touch on?
Actually,
okay, I can make fun of one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Marquise Brown.
No, I was going to make fun of Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson doing completely opposite shit on that 4th and 3. Man, yes. Mark Andrews was so mad that I couldn't even tell who he was mad at. I guess it sounded like he thought that the ball was actually going to be thrown to the other side of the field. That's how, what a mess.
Yeah.
That's the kind of shit Mason Rudolph does too, for the record. Like, dude, young quarterbacks trying to get mental.
That's what it is. I mean, Lamar's still a rookie. Baker's just barely, started. He started his 16th game this season. So we got a lot of young quarterbacks in this division, and I think it's important not to lose sight of that, like I think a lot of people did with Baker early in the year.
I had glossed over Jarvis a little bit that I wanted to talk a little bit more about. But
yeah, he's good.
Do you want to talk about Jarvis or do you want to talk about Marlon and Odell?
We can do Jarvis first because I think there's more with OBJ and Marlon.
So Jarvis, first thing is that there are 2 specific plays down the sideline that I think Jarvis got robbed. The first one was the first down that Chad knows what I'm talking about because we were texting about it. Yeah, man, I don't know, man. It was just like he had the first down, but whatever. Anyways, And then the other one was the touchdown that was on the sideline or down the side too. Like ran right into the pylon, ran it over and everything. And usually on something that's that close, like you'll get the ref just signal it a touchdown and we'll review it, right? But they were like, nope, just clear no. It was unfortunate. But overall, as a whole, like I said, Jarvis had what you could call a breakout game for the Browns this season. 8 for 10. He had like 100 and something yards. What was it? 167 yards receiving this game. Insane. And the last thing I wanted to address about Jarvis was the soft comments about how he didn't run after that ball that got intercepted, right?
Did.
So this is actually,
and there was a play before that on a drive where he caught a ball in the middle of the field and two guys were converging and he just dropped to the ground like Eli Manning.
I wanted to point something out that we've seen from the first 3 games of the Browns offense so far, and that's Baker getting dudes fucking killed. So Jarvis might like Baker. Baker might like Jarvis. But Jarvis has probably seen enough. He's like, I've seen this show before, and I'm going to change the fucking channel. All right? So I would say, obviously, if the game had probably gone in a different direction, I might be sitting here singing a different tune. But at the same time, after seeing like how blatantly like Njoku got blown the fuck up by 2 receivers, and then thinking about Jarvis, who's not like 250 pounds, and seeing those guys converge, again, maybe it's because of the victory. I kind of can't fucking blame him because Baker's been getting dudes murdered on plays like that. So
be a man, Jarvis.
Yeah.
Get concussed, Jarvis.
I would also say, based on later events in the game, the Ravens proved that they obviously could not tackle Jarvis. So their only successful strategy was that he either tackled himself or they were able to concuss him late in the game and just knock him out of the game entirely. So he clearly knew early in the game what they were going to have to do to get him out of the game, and he basically projected his own future. So he was smart.
On that,
smart to get out of there.
Where he like stumbled himself or whatever. So at first he did start to stumble himself, but if you watch it again, I guess slow-mo closely, whatever, you'll see that he actually regains his composure, but then Ricky Seals-Jones kind of puts a hand on his back to like, I don't know if he was trying to help him out or help him push him forward and saying maybe I'll be his rocket booster. I don't know. But that threw him back off balance because he had just caught his balance when it happened. And I blame, as much as I liked Ricky Seals-Jones for this game, I also blame him for that not being a touchdown. So that was my last Jarvis piece.
Yeah, Jarvis had a 2018 Jarvis Landry game. Finally.
All right, so you wanted to wrap up with Odell?
Yeah, and in contrast to that, Odell Beckham, so at the point of the big scuffle, had 0 catches still for the game, and in garbage time had 2 catches for 20 yards on 7 targets.
Yeah.
So Justin was very quick to point out that the last time that Odell Beckham played the Ravens, he went off for 222 yards with
that was me,
with the immortal Eli Manning throwing to him. So Marlon Humphrey has started a trend of doing this to big receivers, with the exception of Antonio Brown, who has pretty much been a cheat code, and the chemistry that him and Ben had was crazy. Last year, Marlon Humphrey held Julio Jones to 2 catches on 18 yards when the Ravens went to Atlanta a couple games after Lamar Jackson started. So Marlon Humphrey's no joke, man. He's tall, he's long, he's athletic. He had a really nice pass breakup when OBJ still had no catches, where Odell had both hands on the ball and Marlon got his arm in between both arms and pulled his hands apart. He's a stud. And one of these things is when Odell Beckham is losing his one-on-one matchup, bad things start to happen. And everybody in the media is talking about how blatant Marlon Humphrey was, which it was a gangster move, choking the shit out of Odell Beckham on the ground. It absolutely should have been a flag, but I loved it. It was gangster as hell because he had both hands on his neck at one point. Because before Marlon Humphrey took him down, Odell Beckham punched Marlon Humphrey in the head.
In the neck.
So for the one of the couple plays before that, Odell was blocking Marlon Humphrey and kind of pulled him down by like the head, neck, collar area,
which was not
on a
flagged,
block.
Should have been probably.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm cool with all that.
Right.
And I'm actually even cool with the chippiness of Odell throw. If you're gonna punch a guy with a helmet, feel free, bro. But when he takes you to the mat and starts fucking choking you out, I don't want to hear everybody in the nation crying about how obvious of a penalty it was and that nothing was called. Odell Beckham started that, and Marlon Humphrey finished it. And Marlon Humphrey humbled Odell Beckham in this game. Odell lost his earring, I guess, at some point, maybe in that specific scuffle. And after the game, he even played it off as like, the only regret that I have is that I lost my earring. Which props to Odell. I think he understands that the way that he plays, you know, he had the big famous him and Josh Norman back and forth trilogy stuff when Josh Norman was in Carolina. So this happens, and hopefully if you're the Browns, it's not foreshadowing of, well, what happens. I mean, the Browns won this game. And at the point of the scuffle, the Browns were in control of the football game. And it does lend itself a little bit to some of the chemistry questions and what if everybody's not eating? Is everybody going to be good still? But I just thought it was worth noting. Marlon Humphrey's a bad man. And unbeknownst to me, he's also a stay-ready all-star. So...
I thought it was interesting because I noticed he got called for a couple penalties earlier in the game, and it made me think that these elite defensive backs, to me, they're just like slightly better than the non-elite ones, and then they look way, way better because they get the benefit of the doubt. He's cheating and grabbing and hooking and doing all the stuff that, you know, everybody's doing, but you just get a couple picks earlier in your career and you get the right reputation, and all of a sudden you get to just grab jerseys and hook people and do whatever you want, and you don't get penalties.
I mean, that's what the Legion of Boom was. That's what the Legion of Boom was built on.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's unique about it. It just made me think because he actually got those penalties called on him earlier in the game, and it's, you know, the camera in the TV broadcast just doesn't show all that stuff, so it's very difficult to like watch him for a whole game. But I don't know, from everything I heard, Odell was, I guess, like effective. He's always been effective in being an enthusiastic blocker, and all that other stuff. So I think the fact that he's playing with Jarvis is going to at least make one good year of lower stats as long as they keep winning.
Yeah, it's just, is he good with that? Is what we got to figure out. So, dude,
Baker will throw it to him. Like, if they keep winning and he's getting low stats, he'll stop getting doubled all the time, and then he'll catch like 4 touchdowns.
Let's hope
and he
so.
Still had 7 targets, and I don't know. This may be hubris on my part, and you guys can check me. He's not going to face a corner like Marlon Humphrey every week.
The schedule's pretty easy this year for the AFC North as a whole. So,
well, just in general, I was talking shit on Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters last week.
Fair.
Like, Marlon Humphrey's better than those guys. Marlon Humphrey's better than the number 1 corner on the Jets. Marlon Humphrey's better than, you know, Malcolm Butler or whoever the number 1 corner on the Titans is. Like, he's really good.
He's better than anyone on the Steelers, so I'll just acknowledge that.
Yeah, I think the only defenses that the Browns have to worry about. So like I said earlier, you know, the Browns season this year should have at least started out kind of early, ramped up, and it's going to ramp up to the peak of the Patriots and then kind of start to ramp down. But they face, again, looking at defenses. So we already talked about the first 3 games. The Ravens, then they're playing the 49ers defense, who's been really good this year. The Seahawks defense, then the Patriots defense. And then it starts to let up a little bit with the Broncos, Bills, Steelers, Dolphins, Cardinals, so on and so forth. But they have a lot of
Dude,
tough defenses in one big chunk.
that
So,
corner on the Bills, Tremaine something or other, he's pretty darn good, man. You got a couple matchups that'll be
that's what I'm
interesting.
saying. Up until about
The
the
Bills have a really good defense this year.
right, Jordan Poyer and everybody.
They are not to be trifled with.
But like I
And
said,
then after the Bills, you have the Steelers.
yeah, I was about to say
lines
up to the
top.
Bills, and then after that, it's the Broncos are a little bit of a dip before the Bills, but anyways, let's wrap that up. So, unless you guys have anything else big that you wanted to hit on.
I'm
I
fine
have
to
some
talk
big
about it.
team news aftermath of getting, as I said, I think in a group text, butt blasted by the Browns.
All right.
First four now games of this year, the green dot was on Patrick Peanut Onwuasor's helmet. On Monday, the decision was made to
The
put
green
the green
dot?
dot on Tony Jefferson.
What's the green dot?
The green dot is the defensive play caller, the guy that's talking to the defensive coordinator.
All right.
I think the idea is maybe that can aid in some of the secondary miscommunication. Patrick Onwuasor is not a very vocal leader, from what I understand, which is not necessarily a knock. You can lead in different ways. He's also relatively young, and I think that it was a lot for him, and the Ravens felt that it was a lot enough, or that the defense was not performing enough to put it on somebody else. I think Tony Jefferson's the obvious next choice. The whole linebacking core is pretty young. Earl Thomas has only been here for 4 games. So I'm fine with that. And all that kind of also plays into the LJ Fort signing, which could potentially allow Onwuasor to move to the weak side linebacker position, which is where he played last year and really excelled. So those two moves could ease the burden and help an ailing linebacking core, which got exposed in pass coverage by Ricky Seals-Jones and got exposed in the run game by Nick Chubb and a below average offensive line. So not good all around, and it doesn't solve the tackling problems and some of that. But Brandon Williams hopefully comes back soon. His knee injury is apparently not long-term, and they haven't even labeled what it is other than a knee injury. But so those are some changes that the Ravens made on Monday. Signed LJ Fort, made Tony Jefferson the defensive play caller, as a reaction to this Browns game. So,
Or could they have signed LJ Fort to try to get a sneak peek into what the Steelers are doing?
Possibly.
Yes.
Look,
God
teams do
damn
it. Teams do it. All right, let's wrap up by talking about our players of the week. So let's start with defensive player of the week. So I talked about Marlon Humphrey earlier today, but my dude,
Joe Schobert.
yeah, right. Come on, guys, Joe Schobert,
Fuck
man.
out of here.
Come on, man. 17 total tackles, 10 solo. Again, instrumental in that fumble to Mark Ingram. I don't know. What you guys
0
got?
forced fumbles.
It pains me that I have to explain to a Browns fan that the Browns defensive player that actually made the biggest difference in the game, when a great Steeler should probably win this award. You disgust me, Justin. Jermaine Whitehead, supposed backup strong safety, 7 tackles, 1 forced fumble that created at least a 10-point
That
swing
was
in
a
the game.
part of the Schobert
Let me
tackle.
finish my point, because he's going to win the award for you. He had
The interception at the end of the game.
a pass block and a pressure that led to an interception. And no, he had the pass block led to the interception by the defensive lineman. and he had an interception on back-to-back drives in the fourth quarter when the Ravens were supposedly playing their best offense. He is, if you want to win games, the one that actually made the difference, player of the week. But since you don't even know your team and he went unnoticed, I'll give you the real defensive player of the week. Cam Hayward took a man's soul this week. He had 2.5 sacks and a forced fumble, and none of those stats include the soul-taking hit. He possesses a soul like this in his hand. I'm holding it in my hand for people that are listening, outstretched.
Him and Joe Mixon can have dinner together this week in the People Who Have Two Souls Club.
Yeah. And by the way, he was rushing the interior of the Bengals offensive line, which features Trey Hopkins, supposedly the strength of the line on the center. So he was actually playing against the good players on the Bengals defensive line, not the tackles.
Yeah, after I just sucked off Marlon Humphrey for 10 minutes. And I thought for a second that Chad was going to nominate Whitehead and that I was going to nominate Cam Hayward.
I nominated both.
So I'm going to second Cam Hayward, and we'll put him up against Joe Schobert.
No, put him up against Whitehead. That's fine. Schobert never gets any fucking love, so I know he's not going to win. And we're about winning at the Cleveland
Cam
Browns
Hayward,
now.
6 tackles. I mean, that's why I didn't nominate Humphrey, because the Ravens got their fucking dicks kicked in. 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, tackle for a loss, a Horcrux. Cam Hayward is my nominee for Defensive Player of the Week.
Love it.
And I'll roll into Offensive Player of the Week. My nominee for Offensive Player of the Week.
I was looking at something else. I was looking at Whitehead's actual stat line, and never mind.
That's cool. Is high school track star Nicholas Chubb himself. He was the difference in this game. Baker Mayfield's statistics were inflated by yak yards. He had a good game, but he didn't have a great game. Nicholas Chubb broke the Ravens defense this week. So 160-something yards, 3 touchdowns. I don't know what he did in the past game. Didn't even matter.
It was like 18 yards. Point. It was nothing. Negligible.
The most iconic play in recent Browns history.
Yeah,
since they've been good again.
I was say they had the 92-yard or something like that last year. What was it, against the Raiders, maybe? But
oh yeah, on their way to a 7-8-1 season.
Yeah,
against the Raiders. Get the fuck out of here. This was against the defending division champions. An 88-yard run that broke the camel's back in Baltimore.
I was just much pointing more out important. That was a big run too. But
yeah, Nick Chubb, he's fast. He runs long distances really fast. We get it, Justin.
Justin, do you have some less qualified Brown to nominate for this award?
So actually, I'm starting to think that this is actually a good debate of Whitehead versus Schobert. He had 8 tackles. Never mind. Well, whatever. I don't want. We are so over time right now. Anyways,
over at 11 tackle order.
What's that?
Yeah, man.
Anyways,
why don't you just send Joe Schobert a mold of your butthole?
Fucking, you can have that happen. You can have like those like chocolate molds of your butthole.
I'm sure, man. He can enjoy it.
Yeah, man.
Are you gonna nominate anyone on offense?
I was gonna nominate Nick Chubb, but just so we only have 2 Browns members, I will also nominate Jarvis Landry.
Well, I'm not going to nominate a Brown.
No, you're going to be like, no, you idiot, Ricky Seals-Jones.
No, I'm not going to nominate a dude that had 3 catches because the Ravens defense forgot that they even had a tight end.
Right.
I'm going to nominate, in a little bit of a stretch based on the definition of the award, offensive coordinator of the Steelers, Randy Fiegner, who actually invented football this week in order to get the Steelers their first win. He literally took their playbook and he threw it in the fireplace which it's not even winter yet. So he had to get the whole thing operational just to burn the playbooks. And he rewrote the whole thing and he taught it to everybody. And Ben Roethlisberger sat in a corner and just pouted the whole time, and he did it anyway. And it was amazing. Do you know how hard it is in the Steelers organization to put Ben Roethlisberger in a corner and have him pout, even after he's had surgery?
Ask Antonio Brown how hard it is.
Huge performance by Randy Fiegner. Can't be overstated. Offensive.
So here's what I'm going to do, because nobody's watching us live right now, and I'm not sure anybody will listen to the podcast this long. So I'm going to put the poll up for Jarvis/Nick Chubb versus Randy Fichtner, and we'll see if the Steelers faithful will come through for Chad.
Bring it, faithful. We were reborn.
A true Phoenix story.
All right. Let's I think that's pretty much it, guys. I'm exhausted. We are like an hour and 40 minutes in. So thanks for sticking with us. If you stuck with us this long, yeah. What was the thing that the other guys did? If you stuck this long with us, comment on us with some word. What should the word be? What should the code word be? And we'll follow you.
The North remembers.
Sure. All right. But anyways, because we want to completely steal someone else's bit, because why would we ever be original?
We don't even have a Twitter account, so it's fine.
A good.
Yes, we do. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode. Join us on Thursday at 9:30. We're going to do our preview episode for NFL Week 5. It's going to be good fun. Thanks for listening. Rate 5 stars. Follow. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Join the Pick'em. Have fun. See you guys in 2 nights. 9:30 Eastern. Take it easy.
Oh, man.